welcome to another episode where we are meeting people, professionals from all over the world. And I do have the pleasure today is a very special day because I am sure I will get to learn so much. I am not going to say anything. I will let her introduce herself first, and then we'll dive into our normal program, which covers cultures, communication, systems, and business etiquette, basically things that will get you closer to the guest culture and also get you closer to the ways they do things. That way you can connect better and do a lot of business with this culture. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hello, everybody, and I should say good morning because I'm calling in from Australia, and the time here is 6:30 a.m. and it's a very, very early start, but it's awesome. I'm a morning person anyway. My name is Rita, and yes, I am living in Australia right now. However, I was born in South Africa. I am of Indian descent. And I'll let you know something. And you might say, oh my God, how could you have been born in South Africa? My great-grandparents had moved to South Africa from India.
Huh?
And so that's how I ended up being born in South Africa.
Okay.
And when we came to Australia, I remember having a dinner party one day.
Uh-huh.
And it was, people that I had not known before, not met before, some of the people. And I asked one of the guys, so where are you from? And he said he was from somewhere in Europe, like a really small town. I can't even remember the place. And I said, wow, I didn't realize there were Indians there. And he said, Indians and potatoes you'll find everywhere. I thought that was really funny. I was like, okay. It's so funny how we have a perception that people from a certain culture can only be in a certain place.
Well, with the world the way it is and globalized and people are moving everywhere, expect to have people. It's like here, we have people from India as well, a very large community. We are going to start, and your name was Rita Mistry, right?
Yes.
And
yes.
Mistry is an Indian last name?
Yes. Yes.
All right. Now, here's what I want to understand. And our audience, we want them to take that information and use it to their advantage.
Yep, sure.
And I do understand that India has a caste system.
Mm-hmm.
We'll start from there. Explain to us, what is a caste system? How does it work? How is the variation in communication styles within the caste system? We would love to know a lot more about the caste system.
So the caste system in India, I don't know a lot about it because it's something that I guess grinds me a little bit because it's separation, right?
Okay.
As opposed to togetherness. So with the caste system, it's about the way it had come about, I believe, from my grandparents' explanation, is that it was per trade. So the caste that I'm from is a potter maker. So my great-great-grandparents used to do pottery. And then you have those that are the jewelers. And then you have those that are the warriors. And those that are the priests. So each caste was dependent on what their trade was.
I see.
And the reason you'd marry into your own caste was because it made it easier for the girl to follow into that trade.
I see.
So imagine if you were from the pottery field, or your family was from there, and you married into the jeweler family, you'd have to adjust and learn all their ways. How to make jewelry. Whereas today we have university, everybody goes to have an academia. And so, if you're a doctor, you're a lawyer, that is then your caste. So for me, anyhow, I don't believe that system applies in today's world because of the way we live.
Is the caste
and then it had,
system,
and then it also had, it is in India, in the countryside, I believe it still is very strong.
Still strong.
Yep, because there are those families that would only want their daughters to marry into a particular caste, because there's even then a hierarchy in the caste, right? So you shouldn't be in a lower caste, or it's how can I say, so say like in the Western culture, if you're from a wealthy family, and then your child meets someone that is not from that same status, then even in today's culture we have that, where the parents are not happy, or because it's not what they feel is enough for their child, perhaps.
Got it. So basically, a caste, just so that we can understand, the caste system is a form of segregation based on trade, whatever your trade is. So within that trade, there is hierarchy. Like in a jeweler, for example, a jeweler marrying somebody from another jeweler
is okay. That's okay.
Is okay, but is there a hierarchy within that caste system?
I don't know whether there's hierarchy, but I know that it's, there's certain areas that people live in, and so there's, or if you live in that area, then you're from that. They even follow different traditions. So within a caste also, there's people that would have different ways of doing things, which makes it a bit complex. And like I said, it's not something that is close to my heart.
Yeah, well,
because for me, it actually is separation, and I'm a person that's all about togetherness.
Yes. I was talking, I'm sorry to cut you off. I was talking to someone yesterday from Pakistan doing a job, and he said that he was from a certain caste. Is the same thing goes India and Pakistan? They have the same system?
Yeah.
Okay.
Except like they would have probably would be the Muslim ways of doing things, and in India it's more the Hindu or the it'll be the way they do prayers, or the way they do it would be different.
So beside the affiliation, beside Hindus, Muslims, Sikh, and what other religious affiliations are there in India? I know there's a lot.
There's a lot, right? And depending on what area, again, it's very, I think, on the map, depending on where you're from. There's like the Rajasthanis, because that's in Rajasthan. So depending on what your area is what you'd be known as and classed as. And even the dress changes and the language changes. So there's so many different languages in India as well.
I see.
The dialect changes. So I'm from Gujarat, my ancestry is from Gujarat.
And I've heard of it.
Yeah, and within Gujarat itself, there's so many different dialects, and the way people speak is very different as well. So it just depends on where you're from. I must say, I had never been to India until maybe about 10 years ago or 12 years ago. That was my first experience of India. And I was just gobsmacked. Just the people, the population, the diversity. So within India itself, the diversity is incredible. So it opened my mind up as well. And there's because everybody's got to fight for what they have, because, it's not an easy life.
There's a lot of competition.
There's a lot of competition. So it's understanding when you meet someone from there and the way they are. It's understanding where they come from.
I see.
Like we might, because we live in the Western, or I've grown up in South Africa, and it's been easier, right? So I don't have the need to be fighting for what I want or being competitive. So when someone else is competitive, you're like, hey, what's going on for you? But it's to understand that, hey, where they're coming from is what they've had to deal with.
Wow. Wow.
Impressive.
I know that in India, it's very competitive, and they're actually the best people as far as technology goes. And within
brilliant.
Yes, within that field, there is tremendous competition.
Yes, and
So,
again,
yeah.
and yes, a lot of them, I must say, the one thing, I don't know, I read somewhere that it's the one place where, we talk about mental health, especially during these times, right?
Yeah.
Mental health has been really rampant, and people have been really, depressed. And they found that the one place that depression isn't a big thing is actually in India, because people have a faith. It's just amazing,
Wow.
the depth of people's faith there.
Wow.
Like, you'd go to the temples there, and people, it's just like blind faith to say, you know what, I know there's something bigger out there that's going to take care of it all. It's okay. We live in this world where we have everything, and everything is so easily accessible for us. And so I think we've lost that deeper faith, or blind faith, or whatever it is. And that's what I found as well when I went. They'd be, honestly, the temples there would be packed. People would stand in queues for hours to get to the altar, to get a blessing, and believe that is going to heal them, or that is going to make life better, or, and they say that it's because of that depth of faith that, there isn't as much mental illness.
Yeah, and I absolutely feel what you're telling me. As you are talking, my mind is picturing how it looks like, because I've never been to India, but I am very familiar with the Indian culture. I do have a lot of friends, customers, colleagues, and things like that from India. So I learn a lot, and I love the Indian food. So let's move from India. We know that there is a hierarchy. We know that communication has to consider the fact that there is hierarchy, is very formal, and it's not direct.
It's not direct. It's sort of indirect, and you get a feeling for it. But the new generations and the younger people are all moving away from that hierarchy and that the caste system.
Okay.
So it's more in the rural areas that I think it's more, it's stronger.
Still more relevant, yeah.
More relevant, but in the in the cities, everybody, the way they live, I must say, is very different. It's just the way we live here.
Moving from India to South Africa.
Yes.
We want to know, number one, are there similarities between the two cultures? That's number one. And in terms of relationship, business, rules, regulations, so on and so forth. So how would you describe that?
I'd say, it's probably easier to do business in India. I think it's less regulated. And then you come to South Africa, and then there is sort of more regulation, as much as maybe Australia.
Okay.
It's less, right? It's easier to get around things. The thing that was helpful, I guess, growing up in South Africa is the apartheid system. As much as it's something that I don't agree with, but when I grew up in South Africa, we actually lived. So say you have different suburbs, right? In America, you have you live in Orlando, so you have Orlando, and then there'd be a neighboring suburb, whatever it is,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Miami, for instance.
Uh-huh.
So in South Africa, say in Orlando, you'd have all the Indians live in Orlando, and then all the Caucasians live in Miami,
Yes.
and then all the local, the African South Africans would have another area that they live in, and that's how we had to actually live. So we went to a school in that area. We weren't allowed to cross, go into other schools. We weren't allowed to even go to different universities. That was in my day. Today it's all allowed. It's all opened up. But when I grew up, I went to an Indian school. So we still followed a lot of the traditions that were going on all the way my grandparents had brought over, because we still lived in the community. And because of
Yes.
the close proximity of the community, it was easy to, only have friends from that aspect. So
Yeah.
however, when you went to work, so you work in the cities, so then you're now intermingling with everybody else. And initially, I must say, for me, it wasn't so tough because I came from a small country town,
Uh-huh.
and my dad had a tailoring business and a gents outfitters. So he was a tailor, but he sold men's clothing as well.
Mm-hmm.
And we had all the farmers, and the farmers were of Caucasian background.
Okay.
So they used to come and get all their clothing from dad. And so they were the customers. So I had exposure to them, So when I was in the shop helping dad, I would talk to them. I didn't have that feeling of hierarchy. I must say, you did feel like you were lesser than. So it was difficult to be able to talk to them. You wouldn't be confident enough. So even going to university, your first year at university, when you sort of integrating and getting to meet them or mix with the different, Caucasians or the Black South Africans, was difficult because you had to, okay, is this allowed? What, you're not sure.
So even within the same country, there were a lot of reservations as far as,
Yes.
okay, am I allowed to interact with this group? And if I do, how would they react?
Yes.
Okay.
Especially if you're not brought up like the way I was, where I was exposed to everybody. So it was quite easy for me, to be able to chat or have a conversation. And I think I've never felt different, even though I was brought up, like I grew up in South Africa.
Okay.
But and my brother always tells me, he calls me flower power, because I've been like that. I've been this open, free spirit all my life. Yet I know, that my friends did find it very confrontational.
Wow.
To say, okay, like, how do we integrate? To what level are we allowed to integrate? Because even though I grew up, so now say you meet someone of Caucasian background at university and you fall in love. So now what happens? The family doesn't accept it because you still have that,
wow.
Yeah. So Romeo and Juliet hasn't gone very far.
Hasn't gone very far. That is so tough, especially if you are in the same country and then you are grouped and destined to be together. Not only that, to stay within that group. So
I'll give you an example. So I used to go to school, right? But there was we used to go to school by bus or by train. And I remember the one weekend, it was really hot, right? And we were waiting on the trains at the train station, and there was no one else on the platform. But on the platform itself, there was a seat that said whites only. and we had to stand at another
How
section.
long ago? How long ago?
So I've been in Australia, so say about 40 years ago.
Okay.
Okay.
So it was still 14 years ago. This was still
40,
happening.
40 years ago.
40. Okay. Okay.
40 years ago. Yeah.
So,
You know, and we went and sat. We were just a few girls. And because it was so hot and we had walked a long way to get to the station, we were tired. And so we went and sat on there was no one there. The platform was totally empty. We thought, okay, we'll go and sit there. And we were asked to move because we weren't allowed to sit there. We were Indian.
And you couldn't say anything. Wow. How is work? I mean, you work, okay, I understand you live within that group. You cannot go to school to another side where they are white or they're
Yep.
black.
But everybody works together. But you go into the city and then you work together. And that's the thing. So when you get to work, because you haven't been exposed to these people, it takes a little while or in those days, today it doesn't, but in those days, it took a little while to sort of assimilate into the culture of it, you know, of the culture of everybody.
And who was, back then, who was in the leadership? Who was in control of the leadership in businesses?
The white.
Okay. So mostly
it's only after I moved to Australia that you know, the leadership had changed.
Yeah, and I believe it happened after Nelson
Mandela
came out of prison, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That is quite powerful, and I can imagine that even within the same country there is a group that is communicating one way, another group is communicating another way, and another group is doing their own thing.
Exactly.
Wow.
You know, so everybody's coming, and yet everybody's living together. When you go to work, everybody's integrated.
So when they go to work, obviously, whites were in charge. Everybody else had to conform. And is that how it was?
So it would depend on the type of work it was, or the company. Because companies are all multinational.
Okay.
But in those days, it was, you know, the whites were given first preference for jobs.
I see.
And now it's turned around. It's the other way.
It's the other way. So when things turned around, how did the white deal with it?
I wasn't there then.
Although I don't like to call a white.
It's not, and I don't either. I find it very uncomfortable. I feel very uncomfortable.
I do
talk
too.
About it.
I do. Yes, I do too. Let's call them. Let's say for the purpose of being respectful to everyone and leave the color and all that stuff aside. Let's say the Caucasian.
And that's why I always say, you know,
from European descent, how do they deal with the change?
You know, I'm not so sure because I wasn't there at the time. And I think it would have been tough because you've been used to having your way.
Yeah.
And then for that to be taken away and things to, you know, now you have to fight or actually be really strong in what you do to be able to land a position or, you know, be influential to be able to get a job in your field.
And the percentage of population, how would you say? Is it equal?
No.
50 or no?
No.
Who is the minority? Who is the majority as far as demographic?
I would say the Indians are probably in the minority, and then you'd have the Caucasians, and then definitely the majority would be the locals.
The locals, okay.
Yeah.
Now, how is business etiquette in South Africa? as far as time, as is it fluid? Let's see, regulations, communication. Like, let's say I want to do business with South Africa. Would I have to understand first the tribe, like the group who I'm
Oh,
dealing with
no, no, no,
first,
no,
or
no.
it's
Unless
a
you working,
culture?
unless you're working with a particular, like the tribes in the countryside,
Uh-huh.
you'd be okay. It's like everywhere else. It has a
Okay, so
similar regulation to.
I don't have to understand pockets of cultures, different cultures. I would say, okay, well, here's how South African in general will
Yep,
do business, and then I go by
yep,
respecting that norm,
yeah, yeah.
whether it's for Caucasian or
It
locals or
doesn't
Asian.
matter. It would, because
Okay,
it would have
I
a
see.
standard, like a blanket. You want to do a
Okay,
business with them? Yep. And it's such a beautiful country.
I am
You know,
sure.
I just yeah, it's
I
just
know that I know that there's a lot of talent in there, and I love the music, I love the culture, and I love the diversity in general in South Africa. Now let's move to Australia. This is probably the most comfortable. Now we left the caste system,
we've
apartheid,
left the apartheid system.
apartheid system. We left the caste system. We're moving away from all of that. How is the transition?
You know, I guess, like I said before, because I've always felt like one with the universe, I've never looked at myself as being different. And that's why, for me, moving to Australia was really easy. The things that I found maybe a bit difficult were the regulations. Like Australia is quite regulated. When it came to things like, I came with a new baby. I came with a 3-month-old
Okay.
baby to Australia, right? And I was
Uh-huh.
really young in those days. And in South Africa, you didn't need a car seat or a capsule. You just held the baby in your hand, or you had
Yeah.
very, so it wasn't regulated to
Uh-huh.
that extent. You got onto the motorway and you could drive, yeah, you could really speed. You came to Australia and everybody follows the speed limit. You're driving at 100 kilometers per hour, and at the moment you're driving 102, you're going by everybody.
I can imagine. I can imagine the cultural shock in terms of regulations.
They should, exactly. I guess the other shock for me was that I didn't have, I had only one family here, just my husband's family was here, his brother,
Uh-huh.
um, but leaving everybody else behind, like my parents and the whole, it was different.
Yeah.
Um, Coming here and having to start afresh uh, with no work, seeing what was available here.
Uh-huh.
And yet, I think what it really taught me is humility
Yes.
and to appreciate just the little things.
Yes. So,
But what I did like, the culture, the part of the culture that I did like here was, like, the things of, taking a child to play group and uh, having that mother's group, which is something we never had in South Africa.
yes, the
So
support
I learned
system.
about the support system of someone besides the family.
Got it. And how did the culture, the Australian culture, how did it welcome someone of Indian background from South Africa?
I must say the people are very, very friendly. Australian people are very friendly.
Uh-huh.
Everybody has time here for you. So even if you're walking on the street and you lost, you can stop anybody and ask, and they'll make the time to show you where to go. Or, and in those days, we didn't have a mobile phone and Google Maps. It was,
Uh-huh.
I,
Yes.
I had to learn to read the map to say, okay, I want to go from point A to point B. Okay, it's something I never had to do in South Africa.
Uh-huh.
You grew up there, so you just knew where to go, and you'd only go where you needed to go. Whereas coming to a new country, to look for a house, to do anything, you had to basically find your way. And there was
Yeah.
no Google to say, okay, let me search for where to buy Indian groceries. So that was one of the things that was very in those days when I came 30 years ago. So I've been in Australia now 30 years.
Uh-huh.
And we couldn't get our spices or, so the Indian spices and things weren't as readily available as they are now. So
We can
even though I
imagine.
grew up in South Africa, I still, the cooking and things that I grew up with was still very Indian. So, we came here and, things like we have something called taro leaf, and it's my husband's favorite food. We were so lucky that we were able to find a bulb. And so we grew that in our laundry because he loved that, and he loves chili. So we grew, because we lived in a cold climate in Canberra, and so it wouldn't grow outdoors. So we actually, had pots in the laundry.
So
and grew those things.
Remind me, what city do you live at right now?
Now I live in Brisbane. When I moved to Australia, we moved to Sydney. So in the first 9 years of living in Australia, I moved house 9 times.
Oh my!
Every year on the year mark. So I've moved a lot of times, and that in itself was it's something you don't do in South Africa, right? The house that you grew up in is the house that, like mom and dad would have. Whereas I have just moved, multiple times, moved cities, countries, states, and
is that
every
natural?
time.
Is that natural in Australian society, moving just like here in the U.S.? I mean, pretty much there are a lot of similarities as far as communication, etiquettes, business, so on and so forth. For you, what I am interested in knowing is, obviously you mentioned that the transition was easily done, or easy for you, as far as somebody coming from South Africa, right?
Yes, so transition culturally was easy. However, we came in when there was a recession, and so work was really hard. In finding work was difficult. So I had to just do whatever it was that was available. And because I had the baby and no one there to take care of help with babysitting, like any grandparents or anything, I had to do things that I could do with the baby around. So I made samosas. I don't know if you know what a samosa is. Yeah, I used to make samosas. Oh, wow. Yes, I used to make samosas and sell to the local people because we lived in an apartment. So I just did a letterbox drop. I made chapatis and sold to people. I used to sew curtaining because I had a sewing machine. And so, I could do that while the baby was asleep. And, I even then bought, I'd say, like a makeup kit. And then you'd go door to door and knock. So like a party plan makeup thing that was Australian brand. So, that's where we started, Mona. Just, humble beginnings.
What do you think helped you with the easy transition from
my
South
open
Africa?
Mindsets.
Your open mindsets. And that would not
I love change. I'm okay with change, and I love freedom.
Have you gone through self-discovery when you moved to Australia?
Huge. Okay, because as remember, in South Africa, I still grew up with all the cultural expectations, the way things are done. And because of the type of person I am, I guess in some ways I used to feel restricted. So, I discovered me here because I could just be me in without caring. I've come to a point where without caring what other people think or the good judgment or the bad judgment of everybody else. As long as I'm coming from my truth and integrity and love, which is where I can come from now, you know. And as we grow, we evolving. And I
Yeah.
guess with the birth of every child, with every move I made, moving from city to city, things are different. And so I had to dig deep to keep upping me, you know. And things come up. We all have pain points, but using those pain points as a gift to grow and discover and see what it is around me that helps me to cope better with whatever's going on. And the one thing that I realized is, and that's how I started doing what I do. Eventually, I mean, I've worked in the corporate world. I've been, a practice manager for a medical practice. I've owned my own business where I think you call it combos. You're living, when you have like townhouses and apartment blocks, and then you have the manager that manages all
condos. Yes.
Condos. That's right. So I used to run a business where I actually managed 120 condos at any given time. So, running their meetings and their financials and doing all of that. I even ran a beauty salon not too long ago. So I even had a beauty salon, So I've done a lot of diverse things, which has, taken me across all avenues of life.
Well, what I'm listening to is a story of someone that is hardworking, open-minded, and trying to find themselves in the society where they live. And basically, that comes with the pros and cons and constant
change and evolution.
Evolution. I wouldn't call it a struggle, really, because struggle, I think
it's not a struggle. It's joy.
Yes, and I'm there with you. Now, a quick question. I know there is a lot of diversity in Australia. Have you felt any discrimination at all? Are you fully integrated within the Australian society?
Yes.
How does that feel like? How does it look like? Talk to us about that.
I'm fully integrated into the society, and it's an open society. They're open to learn more about your culture. I mean, I've even gone and taken salsa dancing lessons because I like that. Or, it's a very diverse culture here. There's people from all over, and everybody respects everybody else's culture, and you're still able to do practice your own traditions as much as you want, or rituals as you want, and it's respected. So like I live in a parkland, and the park in front of me is a place where they actually hold different, depending on what culture is having their Christmas or their celebration. The council would actually put up, something for you here. So we'll have like a Latina day, or we'll have like an Indian day, or we'd have, there's even one for like a refugee day when there's a whole lot of different stalls put up, and you get to learn about different. So it's quite that they try to expose the local Australians to the diversity that we're living in, which is beautiful.
And the local Australians, obviously, they're open and they're eager to know about others. You may find some that are.
But in all countries, you have that.
Yes, everywhere. Now.
And it's because, and you've just got to love them for that, because they're having a moment of their own, and maybe there's a fear, or there's something that's holding them back, or they're not ready to trust yet. And that's okay.
And that's okay. You're absolutely right. And
it's being able to accept that, to say, well, everybody has their own journey, and they'll come to that place of acceptance and trust when they're ready.
Yes. So how do we, well, I am familiar with how we do business with Australians, but you can tell us the difference. How do you do business with Australians? How do you do business with South Africans? How do you do business with Indians?
I think the language that you'd use would be very different.
Uh-huh.
I guess with you know with Indians you'd probably be able to I'm not sure.
Let's with Indians.
With South Africans and Australians is very much like how you do business in America.
Okay, South Africa, Australia, same way you do business in the US.
Yeah, you see, I haven't had much dealing with business in India. Basically, I run courses, right? And they online courses. So if anybody books in for the course, they're going to just be paying online. So I don't have to personally deal with them. I've gone there to do my children's wedding shopping because we had traditional Indian weddings for both my children. And, I actually found before my first trip when I went, you were able to, haggle but now it's become quite strict. Everybody says, "Oh, this is a set price. There's no negotiation." So I think even India's beginning to be more like, hey, what is on the shelf, what the price is what it is, as opposed to how before you were able to haggle and deal. You can't do that. I don't think it's accepted anymore, especially in the bigger cities. I haven't been to the smaller cities or the smaller towns or the country towns. Where I think that would still be, you would still be able to do that and, do a little bit of, it's like, I guess, going to any other Asian place, right? I've traveled a lot. I mean, we've traveled in China, we've traveled to Myanmar. So, I guess that there's similarities with the Asian communities in the countryside. The cities all have what you have in America, what you have in Australia is what the cities have. It's a similar lifestyle, similar way of business. You have your big corporations, all of that. It's when you go into the country that you've got to be, I think, more
careful.
Yeah,
more careful in terms of
more careful and yet easier.
You approach them.
Yes.
Obviously, in here, I would do business. I would use the direct approach. Here is what it is. Here's how it's done.
Yep.
So is that the same way in India and South Africa?
Yeah, that's how. Yeah, it is pretty much the same way. It depends on the level of the business as well, right? Whether how big how small your business is. So on my level, it's just very local, right? But then when you come to the big corporations would be multinational, so they work on the international ways. But say the medium-sized stalls would be, you could sort of smile and, oh, come on, I'm sure you could do better than that. And you'd probably get away with it. So, at the end of the day, I think the world has become so small and we all travel across the board so much that we're very similar.
Yes.
Just on our everyday life, I think we're very similar. And people are very similar in the way they relate, the way they want to relate. And at the end of the day, as well, Mona, we must remember as a human being, what are your basic needs? To be heard, to be loved, to be respected.
To be respected, yeah.
And if you respected and you loved and you heard, you're okay. It doesn't matter what language you're speaking in. It doesn't matter which country you're from.
Yeah.
As long as you're communicating from a space of heart center.
Yeah.
And for me, as far as business goes, business is about relationship and communication. Even work.
I
It's not,
agree.
doesn't matter what degree you have. It doesn't matter. At the end of the
Yes.
day, it's your communication skills.
Yeah. And your personality. Your
Exactly.
personality, how you present yourself, how you approach people, and the way you approach them, and what do you say, and that what do you say basically is what a lot of people stumble on when they're trying to sell in a culture that is not familiar to them.
Familiar.
They don't know, okay, is this a door I should be knocking? And a lot of people, because of that, they shy away and they stay back and they never try.
Yes.
And the difference and the gap gets larger instead of getting closer.
Closer. Yeah.
This program and this podcast, obviously, one of the reasons is just that. Okay, let's bridge this gap. Let's
Yes.
tell you about these people. And
But you
hopefully,
know what, Mona, the one thing
yeah,
that I do find is that, sorry to cut you off there, but being honest and open, so when I ran the condo management business, right? I had come to the end of my tether and I was ready to, I was going to sell the business. But before I sold the business, I went and I spoke to some of the developers that I used to work with that used to give business to me, right? And I said to them, just letting you know that I'm actually going to be selling the business because this is what's going on, for me. I've been totally stressed out and it's not working for me right now. And the response I got, so let's remember that developers are like, it's a male-dominated area, right? Was, oh my God, like, who are you? And I said, why? They said, people don't talk about these things. Like, we would have just got a letter in the mail from someone saying, okay, so this business is now sold. And I said, but that's not how I do business. If I'm going to be working with you, you will know exactly where I'm at.
Yeah.
Transparency for me is very important.
Yeah.
So even when I ran the beauty salon, transparency with my staff was really important.
Yes.
They had the key to the front door, and they knew that the way that we worked in that salon was with love and integrity.
Well, yeah, we all thrive towards integrity, honesty, loyalty, all these good traits, moral traits that
moral values.
Values. But unfortunately, the world doesn't operate that way. So we cannot, I can sit here the whole day and say, hey, this is who I am. This is how I operate.
Exactly.
But then when you put me in the middle of a large group of people, which is called a culture, that becomes different. I have to understand the realm within where do these people stand? How do they do business? What is it that I have to understand?
Then you'd ask the question directly to say, so this is what my need is. What are you hearing? Because it's in what they're hearing when they answer the question. What have they heard in what you've requested? You'll get the answer of how they do business.
Yes. Now, let me ask you one thing. We haven't talked about this gender difference. How are we women seen in business in India, in South Africa, and Australia? How can you tell us what's the difference and what to expect as far as gender variation?
It's the same. Like, I mean, even though America is as far ahead as it is, or it believes it is, women don't have as much say or input as they would like to, right?
Yeah.
If you think about it, the top women in most of the companies, or the top people in most companies, are still men.
Yeah, that's true.
So it doesn't matter. Whatever is going, it's the same everywhere. I guess in India, again, not in the cities.
Yeah.
It's more in the countryside, where women are still kept under wrap, where they're
Yes.
not allowed to do a lot. They're still very domesticated,
Yes.
or expected to, be in the home, not allowed to go out and work even in some areas, or maybe just do, the farming. So it depends on where they situated.
Okay.
And in South Africa, even in South Africa, you have the mining community, and so you'd have the men would go out to the mines, and then the ladies are left back at home.
I see.
And that's only those that are coming again from the farming areas or from the rural areas. Those that are living in the cities, everybody goes out and works.
So if we want to make a major decision, obviously we have either in Australia or South Africa or India, how does it work if we're making a major financial, this is a family, me and my husband, as an example, and we are trying to make a major financial decision, either buying a building, a house, whatever it is. How does the process of getting both couple, as far as the husband and wife, how does it work in these cultures? I'm assuming Australia will be the same thing. How about South Africa and India?
I'd say it would come across better if your husband was doing the dealings.
Okay, and basically the woman is just there. Is she there, present or not present? If she's present,
I have been present in most of those conversations.
Okay.
So I say in today's world, most women are present or want to be present. And then again, it also depends on, it's very, very individual.
Yes.
Because there are some people where, the male is still very dominant.
Yes, yes.
Mm-hmm. I'm very blessed that I'm in a relationship where my husband's very open with me and he respects me to the degree that we do everything together.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's
however, I can tell you, I have acquaintances where it's not like that.
Yes, I completely understand.
So even, especially in our generation, I guess the younger generation, like I look at my sons and my daughter and how, their relationships are, and, how they do everything together, and there's no like one is better than the other or one has more, pull.
Yeah.
It's so different. And then I learned so much from them, just watching their relationships and how they work things out.
Absolutely. So basically, women still have a lot of work to do. Not just in one kind of society, but in all societies.
In all societies.
All societies.
I think we our level of acceptance.
Yeah.
And the acknowledgement that we get needs to be.
The acknowledgement. Okay. Needs, obviously.
Yeah, because we have a lot to offer, but to acknowledge what we have to offer and to allow us to have our voice.
Yes.
Is very important.
Absolutely. I've learned a lot. I guess we've been talking for an hour. I cannot believe the hour.
Yeah, oh my God.
Yeah, I know. We want to stay talking for a long time, but I guess we have to wrap it up. And before we wrap it up, what's your final word for people wanting either to do business with India, South Africa, Australia? Basically, what is your final statement for them? And then after that, you can tell people where they can find you.
So, for me, there's just one word.
Yeah.
And that word is love.
Yeah.
And if you come from that space, and you know that you're being true to yourself, speak in that language, because that language will cross every culture, I believe.
I
Every
agree.
sense of diversity, every color, every creed. And if they don't understand it, then send them love and just feel sorry for them.
Yeah.
Because it's so important when you come from that space.
Yes, I agree with you.
You
Absolutely
know?
agree with you.
Um,
I personally see people. Um, I treat everyone equally. I see people as equal. I don't differentiate. Okay, this one is this color, that color. I see the people for who they are, because everyone
exactly.
has a story. Everyone has some baggage. Everyone has challenges. Why don't we welcome them with open heart and open mind and listen?
Exactly.
Just listen and give people opportunity. They don't. I won't say opportunity to prove themselves, but give them the opportunity to express who they are.
Who they are. Exactly. And so that's where I tell you. So you could find me on Instagram, on
Uh-huh.
Facebook, on YouTube. It's Rita Mistry. And what I do is that's what I actually help people with, Mona, is I help people to connect with their identity. I run virtual vision board workshops, which I'm holding on the 19th for the Americans. I'm doing it on your time, so
Okay.
that you could do it on the Sunday, the 18th. It's your evening, it's my morning.
Uh-huh.
Um, and then I do a program, a 27-day program called Color for Clarity, which takes you through your home, takes you through your colors, takes you through foods, takes you through affirmations to get clear on your identity, to become your authentic self, to release
Wow.
that baggage that's holding you back
Well,
from
maybe
being able to love and accept people and love and accept yourself, first of all, because we
absolutely.
cannot give love externally if we don't feel love internally.
Absolutely, I agree with you. Amen to that. Um, Maybe we should talk later on about having some type of workshop for people here as well about finding out or discovering their identity and their colors and
Yeah,
their food.
so that workshop is actually done online. The
Oh,
27-day program, they can go to my website and have a look at it.
and what's
You
your
know,
website, Rita?
it's
What's your website?
Rita Mystery,
How do you spell it
ritamystery.com.
that way? How do you spell uh-huh.
RIETAMISTRY.com.
.com. Okay.
Yeah,
Well, you heard it.
and everybody out there, seriously, if there's anything that this is one program that has really helped a lot of people just reconnect their heart,
Yeah.
their soul, which is really important. So
Yes.
thank you for
Thank
having
you
me,
so much.
Mona.
Do I say namaste?
Yes, you can say namaste.
Namaste.
Um, you know,
How do you say it in South Africa?
or sabona, which is like
Osabona?
hello. Sabona is hello. So again, it's different ones. In Afrikaans, it's say hoe gaan dit? Or
Candace?
tot ziens is goodbye in Afrikaans.
Okay, Tom Sin. That's
Tot ziens.
Tom Sin. Tom Sin. Thank you so much, Rita, for your time. It's been a pleasure. I've enjoyed it so much, and
Oh,
hopefully we'll have this again. Thank you so much.
thanks, Mona.
Bye. 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 Thank you.
Bye.